Hi, this is Dave, the host of the Mondoweiss Podcast. Before we get started with the new episode, I have an appeal to make. Mondoweiss is a non-profit publication with writers from around the world. 80% of our budget comes from readers and listeners like you. We are launching our summer fundraising drive with an ambitious goal of raising $160,000, and we need your support to continue our critical work. Each episode of this podcast costs about $175 to produce. If you value the movement journalism Mondoweiss provides, we need your support now more than ever. Please visit mondoweiss.net/donate and become one of our supporters today. If you can, give $175 to cover the costs of one podcast episode. If that's more than you can offer right now, please consider becoming a monthly supporter at $5 or $10. Every donation helps us stay sustainable and independent. That address again is mondoweiss.net/donate. Now, on to the program. This is the Mondoweiss Podcast. I'm Dave Reed. Mondoweiss' Gaza correspondent, Tareq Hajjaj, recently published an article featuring witness testimonies of the deadly Israeli attack on the Nuseirat Refugee Camp in Gaza. Massive airstrikes hit the camp just as the Israeli military staged a raid on homes inside the camp where Israeli captives were being held. 4 captives were recovered alive, while over 270 Palestinians were killed and as many as 1,000 were wounded. Resistance groups claimed that 3 other captives were killed by the Israeli military during the raid. Mondoweiss' managing editor, Faris Jackaman, spoke to Tareq about his reporting.
Tareq, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you, Faris.
Now, we're here today to talk about Tareq's recent reporting on unfolding developments in Gaza that we published on the Mondoweiss website this week. This includes a very powerful eyewitness report that Tareq wrote about the Israeli massacre in Nuseirat Refugee Camp on the weekend on June 8th. The mainstream media in the West didn't cover this massacre, and of course it didn't even recognize it as a massacre. Instead, it was painted as a rescue mission to retrieve 4 Israeli captives who were being held by Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza. The media totally ignored that this rescue operation required the killing of at least 274 people. 64 of them were children. The elision was even more obscene than usual, to the point that it amounted to journalistic malpractice. Tareq has compiled several testimonies from people who were in Nuseirat when the operation began, and they tell us how Israeli special forces were disguised in civilian vehicles and opened fire on civilians randomly. And as this was happening, supporting airstrikes targeted Nuseirat's market and killed countless more people. So, Tareq, walk us through the events of that day. How did the events unfold, and can you reconstruct a timeline for us of what exactly happened?
Sure, Faris. Well, at the beginning of the day, when that massacre happened, it was mostly 11 at the morning, and the place that the massacre happened in was local place. So everyone inside a Nuseirat Refugee Camp go to that place to supply their families and to give them what they need if they can offer their needs from the market. So the events start as following. People were in the market and people were around their homes in Nuseirat, in a specific area inside an Nuseirat refugee camp. So an Israeli force tried to get inside that camp without letting Palestinians to discover them. They wanted to go and take the captives they have inside Gaza and then get out without anyone noticed. But this plan didn't go as this. They used a Palestinian vehicle and put on it stuff like the displacement families carry when they move from one place to another. So they wanted just to hide as a Palestinian family and do want to go from one place to another. So at 11 in the morning, this force just stormed the Nuseirat refugee camp. And then after just 10 minutes, the Palestinian factions and resistance discover about this force. So the engagement or the fighting start in this specific place. But the Israeli soldiers, when they step down from their vehicles and when the support come to that area, so the area was full of Israeli soldiers who were running on the streets and shooting every single person they meet on their way, regardless their gender, their age, whether they're children or women or men or anyone. They just shoot anyone on their way to go to that place. And then when they reach there, the air plant and shelling and bombing and drones and every Israeli machine just participated in this operation to kill that number of Palestinians. When I saw some people and heard their testimonies, they were saying that when the Israeli soldiers storm this area, we try to warn them that we are civilians. We raise our hand on the air, screaming that we are civilians, don't shoot at us. But some people were saying that even those people who said so, the soldiers just killed them and left them on the street. By the way, after 2 days of these massacres, the civil defense teams in Gaza were still digging under the rubble to find dead bodies of Palestinians. The number that the health ministry announced on media, about 270 people were killed in this massacres. This is like an intentional number. This is not, so far, this is not the exact right number, because rescue team are still digging and finding new bodies and finding new people.
And so some of the testimonies you gathered from people say that the Israeli special forces were, as you said, they were disguised as civilians and riding in cars. There was also another claim that there was a humanitarian truck that was escorted by Israeli military vehicles. Is that something that has been confirmed in media reports?
Yeah, look, the UNICEF and the UN representative in Palestinian territories here in Gaza said that the Israeli forces that stormed Nuseirat Refugee Camp used humanitarian trucks that started from the U.S. seaport in Gaza coastal, in Gaza Beach. So yes, they used this port, and the operation was a joint operation between Israeli army and the U.S. army, according to testimonies on the ground. Because I heard people saying that the soldiers who storm our houses and kill some of our families member, and the survivor were hiding, so that's how they survived and be able to tell the story. So they said we saw and listened to U.S. soldiers, not only Israeli soldiers. They confirmed that some of the soldiers who stormed with the Israeli army and stormed the Nuseirat refugee camp were U.S. soldiers. And yes, people also confirmed that the Israeli army used the U.S. port and used the humanitarian aid trucks, and also use humanitarian worker customs and Palestinian customs and Palestinian vehicles. So they try to use anything that Palestinian families inside Gaza Strip are using now to go inside Gaza and do their killings operation and get back. So this is how they say or describe a limited operation, that they want to avoid killing massive numbers of civilians. So this is the actual way for them to avoid killing massive number of civilians. So they just killed almost 300 people. That's fine with them all. Like, this is a minimum number, and this is accepted number of Palestinian casualties, and accepted number of casualties in order to achieve the goal of like freeing 4 captives.
And so this is also something that it's not the first time that the Israeli army uses special forces who are disguised as civilians in order to infiltrate to infiltrate places that it claims are housing resistance fighters. So there was the example in the siege of Al-Shifa hospital. You wrote about this, Tariq. So could you maybe tell us a little bit more about how this has been a pattern within Israel's various quote unquote operations throughout the course of this war?
Yeah, of course. When I wrote a Shifa story, I heard some stories like the Israeli special forces were working as sailor on front of a Shifa hospital gates. They were selling water. They were selling some food. They like from the aid that they can get from Gaza. So the testimonies I heard about the Shifa hospital, that those people who were selling and standing always on a Shifa gate and around a Shifa hospital, they were just collecting information, like spying on that place. And of course, they send their information to the commander. So when they find this is a good opportunity, those sailor and those soldier affiliated to the Israeli special forces who are deployed on the place, they immediately just leave their goods and hold their gun and start their official work, which is like fighting with Israeli army. So many people are saying so. So many people are saying that now Israel is trying a new way with its special forces, just to send the special forces among Palestinians to look and gather information, and also to engage in fighting whenever whenever they have to. So what happened in Nuseirat Refugee Camp was little different and more danger than what happened in Shifa Hospital, because this time in Nuseirat Refugee Camp, the Israeli army and Israeli forces, they actually use the same of Palestinian equipment and the same of Palestinian ways to move. So now we can expect that in any minute, in any time, the Israeli army can storm any place and go with his Palestinian costumes and vehicles to go in any place and do whatever they want.
And so let's bring it back a little bit to what was going on in Nuseirat. So you said that the operation began, they were disguised as civilians, and then they started indiscriminately shooting, and there was supporting aircraft strikes on the market. What happened next?
The Israeli forces stormed that house. They were inside, and all of the houses and building around these two houses that the captives were inside, all of them got bombed and all of them got destroyed intentionally, for just to cover on these forces to get out easily. So the shelling and the airstrikes just start to hit every place and everyone and every moving target on the ground at this place. They targeted the market, so a huge massacre happened. So people just got scared, busy, and starting to run from anywhere to anywhere. They don't even know where or what happened or where should go now, because nothing was clear about this operation. So they stuck, the Israeli forces and the US forces stuck inside, and they tried to get all the captives out. They were 7, not 4. There were 7 Israeli captives at that place, according to eyewitnesses and some information released by the resistance group in Gaza. So there were 7 captives, and the Israeli forces tried to get them all out. But when they stormed the Nuseirat refugee camp and reached that place, they found tough resistance to meet them. So they try their best to get the 7 captives outside Gaza, but the resistance was fighting them, and that's why they only freed, or they only returned 4 captives out of the 7. The other 3 got killed during the fighting. So they keep fighting and keep bombing. They destroy the complete area there. And by the way, the captives were only in two buildings around the Nuseirat Refugee Camp market. Only two buildings.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think they destroyed at least 30 or 40 buildings. And, they killed 270 and almost 1,000
Yeah.
people were injured.
And they destroyed buildings basically that were around the buildings that were holding the captives.
Yeah, of course, the complete area, so they can cover their withdrawal from the place,
Mhm.
withdrawal. And then they can just, if there is any possible target from these areas, from these homes around their specific target area, so they can just bomb it before any danger on them or any fighter just go from that place to fight.
Many of the people whose testimonies you gathered, they've relayed some very horrific scenes, whether it's from the indiscriminate killing, being stuck under the rubble, watching loved ones around them taking their last breaths. Um, so, what's one particular testimony that really stuck with you as you were compiling this report?
So many, Ferris, so many. Everyone there got his own story, and each story of them just heartbreaking and let you think about, let you, the stories let you ask yourself, is this happening really in this world? Like, is, are these stories or these crimes are really happening in Gaza? You can't even believe that such crimes in Gaza happened. Like the child who just saw his father burn in front of his eyes. Like, I just want anyone who's hearing me now just to think about this. A child, 10 years old, Faris, and he had to see his own father burning to death in front of his eyes. And he couldn't even go to give him a helping hand because he's already burning to death. Another story, Faris, just think about it. There was a family on the market when a Nuseirat refugee camp happened. A family of three, a father, a mother, and a little daughter. And they were just going to the market. Maybe they want to get some new stuff for their daughters because it's Eid. The Eid is next week, and every family in Gaza it try to make their kids happy by giving them clothes and toys and Eid. So I'm just thinking, because I I didn't have the chance to interview that family. I just heard the story from people who were there. So the family of three were walking on the market, and when the bomb happened, uh, the husband, like a bomb, an explosion just exploded near to this family. So all of them just fell down, and then after a couple of minutes, they start to wake up again. So the wife wake up, and she found her husband like two halves, and she found her daughter is alive too. Imagine that the wife took the daughter and walk away from the dead husband because they have nothing to do to him. They can't hold him. They can't have him to the home to let his family say goodbye, maybe to have them a decent grave to bury them. But no, they just leave him, left the husband and walk away from them. And of course, the third story about the guy I just mentioned in my story that was published on our website, the young guy who was trying to help those families inside homes. Like he was saying, I was in the place and I wasn't know what is going on, but I heard some families screaming. My neighbors, his neighbors were screaming at their homes because their homes was bombed and they stuck under the rubble, and they wanted any help to get out, to survive at least, because they were alive and they screaming. So that Mahmoud Al-Hor, the guy I wrote his story, he was saying, with my friend, I was trying to help these family, and we went to the bombed home, and we tried to dig under the rubble, and we heard a little girl screaming, saying, like, please save me, please get me out of here. So five people this Mahmoud al and his friends trying to get this girl out, but they couldn't because they need some kind of tools. They can't have even the defense rescue team. They don't have the appropriate tools to dig under the rubble, and this is what they have been complaining the past 6 months. So this guy Mahmoud went to the bombed house and was trying to save that family, but Israeli army just bombed them again, bombed the guys who was trying to save the people inside the homes. He said, Mahmoud al he said, when we got bombed again, like directly, the Israeli planes directly targeted the 5 people who was trying to risk the family. So he fall down and then wake up again, and then found himself, he and the rest of his friends are above each other in a small vehicle, all of them bleeding, and some of them like got amputated and years apart, and they all stuffed in the same place together. And Mahmoud was under them all, like all of them were above him in that vehicle. And the road from Nuseirat to the hospital in Deir al-Balah is not that close, so they need at least half an hour to reach there from Nuseirat to Deir al-Balah. So he was saying, like, all my way to the hospital, I was hearing my friends saying their final words, breathing their final breath. They were dying, not in front of me, above me, he was saying. Like he was under them all. He said, like, many of them many of them passed away during our way, and he heard them. He felt them. He was there. He was just next to his friends who passed away. He was in the hospital saying that some of them passed away during our way, and the rest of them passed away inside the hospital. He was saying that I will never get over this. I will never get over this. He was stressing that what I saw today cannot ever be out of my head. He said, like, I heard his testimony, like in the second day of the massacre. He said, like, I couldn't sleep since then. I couldn't even get rest or get some peace in my mind. He was saying, all I'm thinking about now is the massacre and the scenes I witnessed and the words of my friends during their last moments. So this is his life. Now you can imagine these situations for these families, and the I mean the feelings that they will hold forever. And this is not only these 3 families. I mean, every family lost someone in this war. Every family got someone injured. And first, when we say about injured people, I just need to let people know that injured people here in Gaza, the injuries are not small injuries that can people cover and proceed their normal life after healing or after covering. No, the injuries here, it maybe cost you one of your hands, arms, leg. It maybe cost you your, like, it maybe left you paralyzed. These are all of the kinds of injuries inside Gaza. There's no easy injuries, Faris. All of them is life changing. Anyone who got injured in this war, his life is changed directly. He will not be the same person before. He will lose so many things, major things in his personality, in his body, in his mental health. So this is the situation.
Thank you so much, Tareq. Those are a very powerful set of testimonies. And if our listeners want to read more from Tareq's reporting on this massacre, you can go to our website, mondoweiss.net. And the name of the report is I Heard All of My Friends' Last Breath, Testimonies from the Nuseirat Massacre by Tareq Hajjaj. Tareq, I want to pivot now to talk about another aspect of this massacre that's sort of been talked about in the news but hasn't received sufficient attention. It is the issue of the potential U.S. involvement in the massacre. Um, Specifically, the role of U.S. forces and also the potential role of the U.S. constructed floating pier off Gaza's shore. Now, this pier was ostensibly constructed for the purposes of receiving and delivering humanitarian aid, but there have been several reports and concerns that the pier is also being used for military purposes. Now, the Nuseirat massacre is important here because many claims have said that the pier was used as a place from which the Israeli captives were picked up by a helicopter, and that they were there to sort of take advantage of the U.S. air defense technology. So, first of all, I want to ask, what do we know specifically about the U.S. role in what happened at Nuseirat? To what extent do we have confirmation that you said that there are some eyewitness reports that say that they could know that these were U.S. Soldiers in some way. So maybe if you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, Faris. So eyewitnesses from Gaza says that they actually saw a helicopter just in the place of the U.S. seaport, moving the captives, and also from that place, people saying that we always see helicopters come down and just fly from that place. So to be more clear about this space in Gaza coast or on the Gaza beach, we have to know that this U.S. seaport has nothing to do with aid entering to Gaza Strip. Because let's not be fooled. Let's just put the facts in front of us to know where we can go or what we can say. There are so many crossings here in Gaza Strip with between Gaza Strip and Israel and Gaza Strip and Egypt too. So the ground invasion that everybody from the UN and World Food Program and UNICEF and all of the institutions that working to deliver aid to the Palestinians in Gaza, they all say that we don't need like a US base or US airport to deliver aid inside Gaza. They all say that we can use the existence crossings and this will be much easier and effective. Like instead of 3 months to wait until the first aid truck enter to Gaza by the US seaport, we can enter this trucks to Gaza Strip in 2 hours from Rafah crossing. Only 2 hours it will be moved from Egypt to inside the Gaza Strip. But the US seaport got so more benefits or reasons to be there rather than helping Palestinians. And to
And
be
what
sure,
are those reasons?
the most important reason of this is controlling this area and controlling its rate. There are like great goal behind this. And I was interviewing a political analyst last week talking about this. He was saying like this is the first step for the US to be there, to be in this specific area, because there is an importance to Gaza Strip by delivering the natural gas from the Gulf country, Egypt, and some places to Europe instead of, because there is there's a pressure on the gas because of the Russian war against Ukraine, and there's a problem in this specific area. So the political analyst I talked to, he was saying that this seaport will work as first a US based in Gaza Strip. So the US now is occupying Gaza Strip. Now Gaza Strip Gaza Strip belongs to the US under its occupation. So he was saying also, if this seaport works as it planned to do, like delivering aid, working all the time, delivering aid and helping people to move from one place to another. So Palestinians will use it, will find it like a pleasure to have this kind of crossings on Gaza Strip. But no, this is not the fact. They use it as a base to the Israeli forces. It is a commander room for the Israeli army to go invade and destroy and kill Palestinians in Gaza. They have the okay, let me just recall. Uh, yeah, that's why they have it as a commander room
Hmm.
to the Israeli operation and US operation. And by the way, yani, I mean, from the beginning of this war, everyone in Gaza and outside Gaza was saying and still saying that this is not an Israeli war. This is a US-Israeli war
Hmm.
against Palestinians.
You're saying that essentially there's a military purpose for the pier. There's a U.S. geostrategic purpose for the pier. They also will deliver some humanitarian aid that they'll use as a cover and claim that this is the primary reason. There's also another potential reason, and it's something that we published about in Mondoweiss last week from another author who wrote that who was speaking to an anonymous source from within the Gaza resistance, who believed that the port might be used to facilitate the deportation of, and which basically, that's code word for the ethnic cleansing of a portion of the people of Gaza, first to Cyprus and then to Lebanon. Now, regardless of whether this plan may actually ever come to fruition, this is something that has been talked about somewhat, at least online and perhaps even from some analysts and people in Gaza. But to what extent is this also a fear on the ground in Gaza? Is this something that's really there's a lot of awareness about, or is this essentially secondary to the more immediate uses that for which the pier is being used right now?
Well, actually, people in Gaza are aware of this goal of the U.S. seaport in Gaza. They say that once this seaport will be completely working, it will start by delivering aid, and then it will be like a station for movement. So people in Gaza, not all of them want to leave Gaza for good. Some of them want to go to study and get back, want to trade and get back. Some of them want to visit families outside of Gaza and then get back too. And they don't have this chance neither from Rafah crossing or Erbil crossing. So I was talking to that political analyst, and he was saying about the U.S. seaport. He said, imagine if this seaport works as exactly as the U.S. says that it will make it works, like delivering aid and then become a station. He was saying like so many people from Gaza will go to travel using this seaport, but also the Israeli intention and goal from the beginning of this war is to evacuate Gaza people. They started with evacuation north of Gaza to the south of Gaza. And then from the south, Israel, there were some talks and reports saying Israel is trying to push Palestinians to the Sinai in Egypt,
Yeah.
the Sinai desert, but Egypt refused that,
Yes.
saying that if we are accepting this, it will be like Egyptians helping Palestinians to lose their case and their rights and their land. So this is the Israeli goal, just to get rid of the residents in Gaza. They don't want Palestinians inside their homes and inside their lands. They want the Palestinian lands, homes, and they just want to kill all Palestinians. So the U.S. effort is only to complete the Israelis and everyone in Gaza now, saying that this U.S. seaport will work someday. But when? After letting people in Gaza starving and wish to die instead of this kind of life, the Israeli and the US just forcing Palestinians in Gaza to live in. Like, now they are starving. And this is only because of the Israeli policies to make Palestinians inside Gaza starve. So the the understanding in Gaza now is that when this seaport is opening their gates and letting people use it to move, Palestinians in Gaza say that we will go to any place until this war and genocide ends. So see, they don't force people to go and travel. They let people decide now to leave Gaza. But they don't people in Gaza, they don't decide to leave because they want to leave. They decide that only because they want to survive. They want to risk their families from starvation or bombing or dying, or because death is in all its ways and patterns is exploded in Gaza, and death is there in Gaza.
And essentially, this is something that the Israelis have tried to exploit early on to say that, well, they wanted to push them into the Sinai. Obviously, they used humanitarian justifications for it, to say that Egypt should allow Palestinians to be granted safe passage to leave and to be in safety, and then, of course, at some point we might allow them to come back, and of course they never will. Um,
Yeah.
So obviously, the threat of this for the U.S. pier is known, and it's obviously something that I am sure that is being thought out on the side of the Gaza resistance as well. And at the same time, we've heard some reports in which there may have been actual targeting of the pier, either from mortar shelling. And we've also heard that the pier at various stages has suspended some of its operations due to security concerns, safety concerns, and sometimes they've talked about the weather being a factor. So could you maybe unpack some of that and to sort of bring these different disparate bits of information together as to what's actually going on? And I would just like to add one final note, is to say that today even we saw a bit of news come out saying that someone from the US side was saying that they might even consider closing down the port entirely. How do we understand this recent bit of news as well?
Okay, first, when the first announcement of the working of the US seaport, it was working for only like 1 week or 1 week and a half, like 10 days at maximum. And the US seaport was delivering from 80 to 90 trucks every day from these 10 days that was working on. And after that, the US uh, the US released that the waves and winds just caused partial damage to the seaport. So they took part of it to Israel to fix it and get it back to work. But there are some local news and reports saying that the resistance in Gaza targeting by mortars this US seaport. Officially, no faction or no resistance group in Gaza released any statement saying or holding the responsibilities of targeting the seaport in Gaza. There was no any such releasement from any factions in Gaza. But when the US started to say that we are going to make or we are going to build a US seaport inside Gaza, all of resistance faction inside Gaza said one statement. They said no, and we will consider it as part of the occupation. And also the factions in Gaza said that we will consider every country or everybody who's trying to put armed forces in Gaza or trying to put any kind of armed people inside Gaza. The factions in Gaza say that we will consider it as exactly as the Israeli occupation, and we will consider it as a new occupation, and we will deal with it accordingly. So if there might possibilities that the resistance target this seaport, but they didn't release or they didn't say.
Thank you so much, Tareq, for your reporting and for bringing us the kinds of stories from Gaza that we can't find anywhere else. Tareq, you've obviously been working on another report about the Gaza seaport, which probably when this podcast is published, this report would also be published. So if our listeners would like to go to the website and read it, you can go to mondoweiss.net. It'll be on there, I'm sure. And also, please, again, check out his collection of testimonies from the Nuseirat massacre. I heard all of my friends' last breath testimonies from the Nuseirat massacre by Tareq Hajjaj. Thank you so much, Tareq. I encourage you to follow him on social media, where he shares snippets of his life and his point of view as a Palestinian from Gaza who's been reporting on and living through this genocide. His Instagram and Twitter handles are at Tareq S. Hajjaj. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more episodes like this, make sure to subscribe to the Mondoweiss Podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you, Tareq.
You're welcome, Faris. Thank you so much.
That's our show. Mondoweiss is a non-profit publication with no paywalls. If you would like to support our work, please go to mondoweiss.net/donate. Please leave a rating and review to help other listeners find the show. Subscribe to one of our free email newsletters so you can stay up to date on events in Palestine and related politics here in the US and around the world. Finally, if you have any more feedback, send me an email at dave@mondoweiss.net. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode.